When we go on vacation, most of us never consider the possibility that we might not return. A holiday is meant to be a time to relax, to unwind, not to say goodbye to the life we know forever. Sadly, that's exactly what happened to Lynn Bradley. At just 23 years old, she boarded a cruise with her family, a trip that was supposed to be a joyful getaway. But within just 30 minutes, everything changed. One moment, Amy was there. The next, she had vanished without a trace. Lynn Bradley and her family headed on a cruise on March 21, 1998. Every year, countless families dream of leaving behind their everyday lives and setting out on a much-needed escape. For the Bradleys, that dream took shape in March of 1998, a cruise that promised unforgettable memories. Ron and Iva Bradley were joined by their grown children, Brad and Amy, as they boarded the Rhapsody of the Seas in Puerto Rico. Their voyage would take them through the crystal-clear waters of Aruba, Curacao, and the Netherlands Antilles, a picture-perfect route almost too good to be true. Lynn Bradley was the eldest child in her family. At 23, she was entering a stage of life where independence and self-discovery began to take shape. Born on May 12, 1974, Amy lived in Virginia and was attending a local university. Like many young adults, she was trying to figure out her place in the world. This cruise was meant to be a brief escape, a chance to spend time with her family, almost like an early birthday gift. While studying at Longwood University, Amy earned a degree in physical education, a fitting path for someone known for their athletic skills. From an early age, she stood out in sports, particularly basketball, which even earned her a college scholarship. On top of that, Amy was an excellent swimmer and worked as a lifeguard. In many ways, this cruise seemed like the perfect break, a chance to relax and recharge. Earning a degree is one thing, but stepping into the workforce is an entirely new challenge. Fortunately, Lynn Bradley was already one step ahead. She had secured a position at a computer consulting firm, set to begin that fall after graduation. It was a big deal for someone her age. At just 23, she was already checking off some of life's biggest milestones: college success, a degree, and a career opportunity ahead. Perhaps that's why she joined her family on the cruise, as a way to celebrate the exciting new chapter about to unfold. The Bradley family had been on board for a few days, gradually settling into vacation mode. Being young and full of energy, Amy was naturally drawn to the ship's nightlife. Before long, she discovered a club on board where she could dance the night away. On the night of March 23, 1998, the cruise ship anchored near the shores of Curacao. Passengers were expected to explore the island the following day. Everything seemed completely normal. That evening, Amy and her brother Brad headed to the ship's nightclub, ready for a night of dancing, drinks, and unwinding. The nightclub was lively on its own, but what really brought the energy that night was the live band. A group called Blue Orchid had become a hit among the passengers, drawing quite a crowd with their performance. Amy found herself particularly drawn to the band's bassist, Alistair Douglas, though most people knew him by his nickname, Yellow. Throughout the night, Amy and Yellow were seen together, talking, laughing, and sharing drinks after the band wrapped up their set. They danced closely and seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company. To onlookers, it all seemed harmless. Just two young people having fun on a cruise. Even the best nights have to come to an end. That night was no different for the Bradley siblings, who decided to call it quits shortly after 3 a.m. But what happened next would mark the beginning of something unusual for the family. The ship's computerized door lock system recorded Brad returning to their cabin at 3:35 a.m. Amy arrived just 5 minutes later. If they left the nightclub together, why did Amy lag behind by 5 minutes? The only thing Brad clearly remembers from that moment was telling Amy, "I love you," before falling asleep. Sometime between 5:15 and 5:30 a.m., Ron Bradley, Amy's father, woke up and decided to check on his children. The night before, they had all shared dinner, but the parents hadn't joined the kids at the nightclub. Ron went to Amy's room and saw her sleeping on a lounge chair with the door firmly locked. He said that if the door had been open, he would have gotten up to close it himself. After that, he went back to bed and didn't think much of it. But when he woke again at 6 a.m., Ron suddenly realized that his daughter had vanished in the past 30 minutes. Ron Bradley was absolutely certain that just 30 minutes earlier, he had seen his daughter sleeping on the lounge chair in their cabin. But upon waking again, he began to wonder if Amy had stirred and decided to move back into her bedroom, the first place he went to look for her. Yet, she wasn't there. Ron's heart started pounding faster as a creeping sense of worry settled in. He thoroughly searched the room, hoping to find any clue or hint that might explain her disappearance. Everything appeared untouched. Her personal belongings were neatly arranged, clothes folded, and even her shoes remained exactly where she had left them. The only things missing were Amy's lighter and a few intimate items. Small details that seemed insignificant, but added to the mystery. It made Ron realize that if Amy had left the cabin at all, she clearly hadn't planned to be gone for long, as she hadn't taken nearly any of her belongings. This realization only deepened his anxiety and despair, turning her disappearance into a baffling puzzle. At that time, Ron Bradley was the only person awake in the family's cabin. He didn't want to wake his wife or son to ask if they had seen Amy that morning. Instead, he chose to search for her himself around the ship. He checked many areas and asked crew and passengers, but found no trace of Amy. Later, Ron admitted he was confused, as this behavior was unlike his daughter. Leaving without telling anyone where she was going wasn't typical. After the unsuccessful search, Ron told the family that Amy was missing. This was around 6:30 a.m. The Bradley family begged the cruise company not to let passengers disembark until Amy was found, but their pleas were denied. Ron was only allowed to stay in public areas of the ship, while large parts, restricted crew zones, still needed to be searched. With limited options, the family had to ask for help from the ship's staff. Unfortunately, not everyone shared the same level of concern over Amy's disappearance. Meanwhile, the ship was preparing to dock in Curacao for a day of exploration. Despite the Bradley family's urgent request to delay disembarkation, their pleas were ignored. Passengers and crew alike headed ashore. The ship's staff didn't make any public announcements about Amy's disappearance until most passengers had already left. There were around 2,000 guests on board, plus hundreds of crew members managing safety and service. Surely someone must have seen something. Maybe they spotted Amy but didn't realize she was missing, so they stayed silent. For the Bradley family, this was just the beginning of many frustrations. If the cruise line wouldn't hold the disembarkation, they could have at least made a proper announcement. Instead, at 7:50 a.m., when most guests were already off the ship, they simply said, "Amy Bradley, please report to the purser's desk." The cruise staff later claimed they didn't want to cause concern among other passengers, which is why they chose not to act immediately. But that didn't stop the Bradley family from taking matters into their own hands. Their 23-year-old daughter had vanished, and they had no idea how that could happen, especially while the ship was anchored at sea. One question kept repeating in their minds. How does someone just disappear from a cruise ship? Even then, the crew argued about whether to make an official announcement. They were allegedly worried that telling everyone about Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance would alarm the guests. In fact, they refused to even post her photo around the ship. When someone goes missing, especially in the first few moments, every second matters. Thankfully, Ron Bradley noticed something was wrong within just 30 minutes of last seeing his daughter asleep. That should have given them the best possible chance to find Amy quickly, especially since there was no sign she had left the ship on her own. Unfortunately, the actions taken by the cruise staff only slowed everything down. Instead of doing a full-scale search, they limited their efforts to areas Ron had already checked. Staff only in restricted zones, the very places Amy might have gone, were never searched. As a result, the Bradleys were left helpless, standing by and hoping Amy would somehow turn up on her own. The ship's docking only increased the Bradley family's sense of panic. They were genuinely afraid that Amy could be taken off the vessel without anyone noticing. The parents had several reasons to insist on delaying the disembarkation. First, as long as all passengers remained on board, there was still hope that someone might have seen Amy or could even help in the search. Second, if someone else was involved in her disappearance, docking was the perfect opportunity to quietly take her ashore. The family tried to convince the crew to postpone letting passengers off the ship, but their pleas were ignored. They were left without support and with no control over the situation. There were no signs that Amy Lynn Bradley had fallen overboard or been pushed. When someone vanishes without a trace, the possible explanation can seem endless. It quickly became clear that Amy was no longer on the ship, and if she was still nearby, she had no way of letting her family know that she was safe or that she had already left. One theory was that she might have fallen overboard, but that seemed unlikely. Amy was a strong swimmer and a trained lifeguard who knew how to handle herself in the water. On top of that, there were no signs of a struggle or any evidence that someone had fallen into the ocean. None of it added up. The Bradley family began to suspect that someone from the ship's crew might have been involved in Amy's disappearance. After Amy went missing, her family started thinking back on everything that had happened during the trip. There were only so many people who could have been involved, and when the passengers didn't seem suspicious, the focus shifted to the crew. Apparently, there had been some strange behavior from the start of the cruise. The Bradleys recalled that certain staff members were paying unusual attention to Amy. Her mother, Eva Bradley, later told Dr. Phil that the attention Amy was getting from the crew was obvious and even unsettling. And it wasn't just the parents who noticed. The whole family picked up on it. Some waiters allegedly tried to get Amy Lynn Bradley to go with them to a restaurant. Flirting and casual encounters are common during vacations, but it's always important to respect boundaries. The Bradley family started getting concerned when it became clear that some cruise staff were a little too interested in Amy. Ron Bradley later recalled that one of the waiters asked for Amy's name, but things became more unsettling when he overheard a conversation in which they were talking about inviting Amy somewhere. It wasn't clear who else was involved, but apparently they were planning to go to a restaurant called Carlos and Charlie's once the ship docked in Aruba. Some witnesses claimed they saw Amy with Alistair Douglas around 6 a.m. The morning Amy Bradley disappeared was filled with conflicting reports. Even though passengers were allowed to leave the ship before any formal search began, a few of them said they noticed things that could be relevant. At least, that's what they believed. Some were sure they saw Amy with someone they recognized. That person was none other than Yellow, the bassist from Blue Orchid. Initially, it was believed that he and Amy went their separate ways around 3 a.m. However, some witnesses later claimed they spotted the two together again around 6 a.m. near the nightclub, possibly drinking coffee. Despite this, Yellow insists he didn't see Amy again after she left the club on March 24, 1998. Other witnesses claimed to have seen Amy, but none of those sightings were ever confirmed. After news of Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance broke, several individuals came forward with the information they believed might help. On the morning she went missing, 2 passengers reported seeing someone who resembled Amy enter an elevator carrying a lighter and some personal items. However, their statements didn't lead to any real progress in the investigation. Another person who spoke up was a taxi driver. He claimed that someone matching Amy's description approached him that same morning, urgently asking to use a phone. Still, authorities were never able to verify this account, and the lead ultimately went nowhere. A Canadian tourist claimed Amy tried to get his attention while on Curaçao. As the case of Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance continued to make headlines, surprising witness reports began to surface. In August 1998, around 5 months after Amy was last seen on her family's balcony, a Canadian computer engineer reported a possible sighting. He stated that while visiting Curaçao, he saw a woman walking on the beach with 2 men who looked just like Amy. What struck him most was her behavior. She appeared to be trying to make eye contact with him, as if signaling for help. However, he eventually lost sight of her near a nearby cafe. He's convinced it was Amy Lynn Bradley. The tattoos matched exactly. It's easy to mistake someone for another, especially when you want to believe it's true. Could the Canadian tourist have been wrong about what he saw? According to him, absolutely not. He claimed he was just 2 feet away from the woman and was sure it was Amy. What made him so confident were the tattoos. The woman reportedly had the exact same tattoos Amy had: a lizard around her navel, a Chinese symbol on her ankle, a sun on her lower back, and a Tasmanian devil holding a basketball on her shoulder. That level of similarity seemed far too unlikely to be a coincidence. A U.S. Navy petty officer reported seeing Amy working at an adult club in Curaçao. Nearly a year had passed since Amy Lynn Bradley disappeared when a new potential sighting emerged. A junior officer in the U.S. Navy claimed he encountered a woman resembling Amy at an adult entertainment venue in Curaçao. But it wasn't just the resemblance that caught his attention. According to him, the woman told him her name was Amy Bradley. He said she pleaded with him for help, explaining that she was being held against her will and couldn't escape. The incident left a lasting impression on both the family and investigators. He claimed he didn't report it earlier because he feared losing his job. Although the Navy officer believed he saw Amy Bradley, he didn't tell anyone about it until January 1999. He later explained that he was afraid of facing disciplinary action, especially since his superiors likely wouldn't have approved of where he had been during his off-duty hours. That's why he waited until after retiring to come forward. He also said that he had nearly forgotten about the incident until he saw a photo of Amy in a magazine. While his account was never officially verified, some people chose to believe him anyway. Others criticized him for potentially withholding crucial information that might have helped locate Amy. A woman claimed she saw Amy in a restroom in Barbados. As the years went by, the Bradley family often felt that not much was being done to find their daughter anymore. Still, people around the world continued to search or report possible leads, one of them being Judy Moorer. In 2000, she shared what she believed might be a significant clue in Amy Bradley's case. Judy said she was in a department store restroom in Barbados when something unusual happened. She recalled already being in a stall when another woman entered the bathroom accompanied by 3 men. What stood out was the way the men allegedly spoke to her. They told the woman she had to follow through with a deal or there would be consequences. Judy Moorer helped authorities create composite sketches. When you come across someone in distress, it's not always easy to know what to do. According to Judy Moorer, she waited until the men had left the restroom and were out of earshot before she asked the frightened woman if she needed help. That's when the woman told her that her name was Amy and that she was from Virginia. However, the men returned quickly and took the woman away, and none of them were seen again. Although Judy reported the incident to the authorities, it didn't lead to any new breakthroughs. Still, she worked with a forensic artist to create composite sketches of the 3 men and the woman, hoping that someone might recognize them. A man claiming to be a Navy SEAL offered to rescue Amy Bradley. Over the years, the Bradley family appeared in numerous media outlets, hoping to keep the case of Amy Lynn Bradley alive. Then, in the fall of 1999, someone reached out offering to help. A man named Frank Jones contacted the family by email, identifying himself as a former U.S. Army officer who now worked as a Navy SEAL. He claimed to have a team of skilled professionals and said they knew where Amy was. According to him, they were prepared to carry out a rescue mission to bring her back home. Frank Jones claimed she was being held in a guarded residential compound. The news that someone had seen their daughter gave the Bradley family a renewed sense of hope, something they hadn't felt in months. The fact that the information came from someone who appeared to be a reliable source and claimed to have access to people who could bring Amy home made things even more encouraging. The family had no reason not to trust Frank Jones. To strengthen his credibility, Frank said he knew the lullaby that Iva Bradley used to sing to her daughter as a child, supposedly proof that he had spoken with Amy. He also provided a description of her tattoos. To top it off, Frank claimed that Amy was being held in a residential compound, surrounded by barbed wire and heavily guarded by Colombian military forces. The Bradley family paid Frank Jones $210,000 to find their daughter. The Bradley family was determined to give Frank Jones the best chance, especially since he kept providing them with information about their daughter over the following months. He claimed that more sightings and new leads were coming in, which would eventually lead to her rescue. He just needed to wait for the perfect moment to act. It seemed like that moment came several months after Frank first contacted the Bradleys. However, a new issue arose. He needed more funding. Eventually, Ron and Iva Bradley wired Frank $210,000 so he could carry out the operation to bring Amy home. They expected to hear about the rescue within days, but the call never came. Frank Jones was found guilty of defrauding the Bradley family out of thousands of dollars. For months, the Bradleys believed their daughter was on her way home. That was until they received the devastating news that Frank Jones was not who he claimed to be. In reality, he had fabricated everything he ever told them about spotting Amy Lynn Bradley and working on missions to bring her back. Instead, it was all a scam. Things came crashing down for Frank in February 2002, when federal prosecutors charged him with defrauding his Bradley family out of $24,404. The rest of the money had come from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, adding another $186,410 to the list of charges. 2 months later, Frank pleaded guilty to mail fraud and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. A photo of a woman sold into slavery was sent to Amy Bradley's parents. It took nearly 8 years before Ron and Iva appeared on the talk show Dr. Phil. There they shared with the world a photograph of a woman they had received via email. What could be a major clue? If the photo was real, there was a strong chance that Amy Lynn Bradley had been kidnapped and sold into adult slavery. The email contained 2 photos, both of which bore an eerie resemblance to their daughter. Reportedly, they were discovered by someone who tracks women forced into sex work in an effort to reunite them with their families. According to the source, the woman in the pictures looked distressed and depressed. She was also referred to as Jazz on the website. A jawbone, possibly belonging to Amy Lynn Bradley, washed ashore in Aruba in 2010. The disappearance of Natalee Holloway captivated the entire nation. After all, she was only 18 when she vanished in Aruba, and her case drew attention to many other missing persons cases, like that of Amy Bradley. In 2010, a human jawbone washed up on a beach in Aruba. Since that was where Natalee had gone missing, authorities immediately assumed it might be hers. However, DNA tests ruled out any match. Still, they determined that the jaw likely belonged to someone of Caucasian descent. Though the identity of the person the bone once belonged to was never confirmed, no further tests were conducted by authorities. Several people speculated that it might have belonged to Amy and could have finally given her family the answers they had long been waiting for. Here's a widespread theory online that Amy Lynn Bradley was kidnapped and subsequently sold into human trafficking. Numerous internet sleuths have long debated the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. While many have helped solve various cold cases over the years, no one has come close to unraveling the fate of the 23-year-old woman who vanished in 1998. However, the most popular belief within online communities is that Amy was abducted and forced into the trafficking network. Those who support this theory point to the testimony of a U.S. Navy officer and photos sent to her parents as strong evidence. Additionally, conflicting accounts from some witnesses to the authorities have raised even more questions. People claim that Yellow provided the police with conflicting accounts about what happened regarding Amy's disappearance. Iva Bradley openly expressed her belief that someone had taken her daughter and secretly removed her from the cruise ship, especially since the crew refused to delay the docking. In an interview with People magazine, she mentioned that many admired Amy and believed that her daughter would have been a prize trophy for anyone who managed to get her. Attention quickly shifted to Yellow, the bassist from Blue Orchid, who was seen close to Amy that night. It's believed that Yellow initially gave authorities a version of events that didn't match what the surveillance footage showed. Still, no charges were ever brought against him in connection to Amy's disappearance. If it wasn't Yellow, then who could have been involved in Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance? Many speculate that a waiter on the cruise ship might be responsible. Amy's family frequently encountered a particular waiter who persistently tried to send notes to Amy, inviting her to join him for drinks once the ship docked. Amy's parents continue their relentless search, reaching out to every expert they can find. They hired private investigators, but with little success. They even set up a dedicated website and a 24/7 hotline to aid the search, but it yielded no leads. Iva Bradley admits she has a gut feeling that someone saw her daughter, wanted her, and took her away. One of the most unsettling aspects of Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance was the sudden removal of all her cruise ship photos. During the voyage, a professional photographer had taken pictures of passengers, later displaying them in a kiosk for purchase as vacation keepsakes. When the Bradley family went to look for photos of Amy, hoping to show them to other guests. They were stunned to find that every image of her was already gone. The family believes someone intentionally took the photos before they had the chance, possibly the very person involved in Amy's vanishing. Another widely discussed online theory suggests that Amy Lynn Bradley may have lost her life aboard the cruise ship and was then thrown overboard. What shocked many was the fact that authorities never conducted additional DNA testing on the jawbone that washed up on a beach in Aruba, even though it could have belonged to someone else who went missing in the region, including Amy. For some, that bone is the only potential clue left behind. Supporters of this theory believe that Amy might have been attacked or the target of a botched abduction attempt. If she tried to fight back, the situation could have escalated, leading to her death, and those responsible may have disposed of her body by tossing it into the ocean. Amy Lynn Bradley was officially declared deceased on March 24, 2010. For many, it's hard to accept someone is truly gone without physical evidence, like a body. Still, in some cases, a person can be legally presumed dead despite the absence of remains, a concept known as presumption of death. Tragically, this became a reality for Amy's family exactly 12 years after she vanished. On March 24, 2010, the anniversary of her disappearance, she was formally declared dead. While for some it marked the end of the search, others still believe that Amy might be alive somewhere, waiting to be found. They refuse to give up hope. Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance has remained in the spotlight for years through various media features. Even though authorities have declared her deceased, Amy's family hasn't stopped seeking answers. Instead of giving up, they've dedicated themselves to keeping her story alive, launching websites, setting up hotlines, and sharing their journey with the public. Her case has been covered by several high-profile television shows, including Disappeared and America's Most Wanted. Numerous true crime podcasts have also featured her story, such as The Casual Criminalist, Crime Junkie, and Case File. Yet, despite all the exposure, the mystery of what truly happened to Amy remains unsolved. Even the multi-million platform Netflix has made a documentary about the high-profile disappearance of Amy Bradley, and the premiere of this documentary will take place in July 2025. Substantial rewards have been offered for credible leads regarding Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance. Years may have passed, but many still hold out hope that the truth about what happened to Amy Lynn Bradley will come to light. Among those committed to solving the case is the FBI, which has pledged up to $25,000 for information that either leads to Amy's location or helps bring those responsible to justice. Her family has also offered their own rewards, believing that money might encourage someone to speak up. They're offering $50,000 for any solid tips that could help find her, and an even larger $250,000 reward to anyone who can safely return Amy to her loved ones. The story of Amy Lynn Bradley is more than just another missing person case. It is a heartbreaking mystery that has touched thousands around the world. A vibrant young woman vanished in plain sight, and since that day, her family has lived in a constant state of torment, caught between hope and despair, clinging to faith in the face of silence. They have never stopped fighting, never stopped searching, and have never let the world forget Amy's name. Her disappearance stands as a painful reminder of missed chances, gaps in security, and the haunting reality that even in crowded spaces, someone can vanish without a trace. Until the day the truth is uncovered, Amy's story will continue to be a powerful call to awareness, empathy, and vigilance, because perhaps somewhere out there hope still remains. Thank you for watching the video until the end. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the project grow and motivates me to create more captivating stories. There are many more amazing and interesting stories coming your way.